Welcome to Domain 2, Task 1. Execute the project with the urgency required to deliver business value. In this domain, it starts off with the enabler 2.1.1, which is assess opportunities to deliver value incrementally. How do you do this? This is really pointing you towards the world of Agile, where this is done in staggering the work. Assess opportunities to deliver value incrementally is about selecting the project and its management approach via small increments of work to mitigate the impact of risks associated to the projects that attributes higher uncertainties and complexities. So in other words, when you're starting off the project, you need to ask the question, which delivery approach is best? Predictive, iterative, agile, incremental. And based on what you discover, you may choose to go with a predictive approach. Perhaps that's the best way of delivering the value that this project is meant to deliver. But other times, you'll see an opportunity. Do you see the word assess opportunities? Other times you'll assess the opportunity and see we can deliver in increments. So if you assess the project and you realize we can deliver in increments, then that needs to be planned in. Some projects have considerable uncertainty around project requirements and how to fulfill those requirements using current knowledge and technology. So who is responsible for this? Someone we call the team facilitator or the product owner. The product owner is someone who understands the needs of the business, where these requests are coming from. Why do we need to do this? In other words, why do we need to execute the project with urgency required to deliver business value? By doing a small increment and then testing and reviewing it, the team can explore uncertainty at a low cost in a short time, reduce risk, and maximize business value delivery. When teams deliver small increments, they are better able to understand the true customer requirements faster and more accurately than with a static written specification. Case in point, I'm working with a client and I give them a final product, and they're kicking back so many change requests that it became apparent we needed to get a mock-up demo in front of them quicker. Not the full thing, but if we just had that minimum viable product that we could send to them to get enough feedback to guide us on the right trajectory, it would have been a good thing. It would have been time well spent. But because we did not do that, we ended up getting a ton of feedback that pointed to the other direction we're coming from. So when you work with a team in the world of Agile, there's something we call the minimum viable product. You want to get the minimum viable product in front of the customer so that they can give you enough feedback for you to ascertain if you're going in the right direction or not. So when and where is it done? It's done in a predefined time in the project, typically during the initial stage. So in the initial stage, this is where you're assessing how we're going to deliver value. How many increments should this be? What should we deliver and when? You haven't started developing, but you're beginning to ask the question. How is it done? Expert judgment is considered for the size of the project, its duration, complexity, organizational factors, clients, or stakeholder expectations. You're delivering a 50-story building to a client. Now, in the world of Agile, it's different. For software development, we may say we can deliver increment 1, increment 2, increment 3. But how do you do a 50-story structure and deliver it in increments? Think about it. How? Now, there might be some shortcuts to get certain stories done quicker than others. And that's what you need to be thinking of. Even if you're not working on an Agile project, you should ask, how do we get business value to our clients? Well, maybe we can release the 50th floor first and we can get people to begin to work out of there while the other floors are being kitted, while the other floors are being worked on, while the minor work is ongoing. But the way that works, the city, the state, whoever is in charge of that project may not let you do that. So you need to look for creative ways of delivering value from that structure ASAP. I remember in Canary Wharf in the United Kingdom, when we, Citigroup, were moving in from Victoria, London, they let us use certain floors. Certain floors were cordoned off. They were still being worked on, but other floors we could begin to work. So decision-making is based on the situation at hand. How else can we execute the project with the urgency required to deliver business value? Well, we need to examine the business value throughout the project. If you examine the business value throughout the project, you see how value is being disseminated. You see how value is being given from previous iterations. And it needs to be something that you constantly do. So, examine the business value throughout the project is about evaluating the project work. So as you're getting the work done, you're looking and asking questions regarding the project work to verify whether it matches business value as per the roadmap that meets stakeholder expectations. Not only is this a thing of reporting or burndown charts or graphs or charts, but it's something of questions and answers directly to a customer. Remember, this is a new task, so a lot of it is agile leaning or hybrid leaning. Who is responsible for this? Team facilitator, product owner, the cross-functional team. Why should we do this? Well, examining business value throughout the project allows the team to improve the project work, the processes, and the outcome. It's part of that PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Deliver the value, go back to the drawing board, ask the question, is this going well? Is it not? If not, make an adjustment. It's done all throughout the project. How is it done? There are ways that you can examine the business value even while the project is underway. And one of these is by a daily stand-up meeting. Teams use stand-ups to micro-commit to each other. So every day, if you are asking me, what did you do yesterday? It makes me think, did I do anything? What are you going to do today? It helps me commit to what needs to be done. And the third question asked in a daily stand-up is, are there any impediments that are blocking your way? Tell us, so that someone in the room after the meeting can help you remove those obstacles, those impediments. So we use daily stand-ups to micro-commit, to uncover problems and make sure the work flows smoothly. Another opportunity is during what we call reviews. In the world of Scrum, we call these sprint reviews. So as the team completes the features, usually in the form of user stories, the team will demo what they've done to the client, to the customer. The product owner sees the demonstration and accepts or declines stories. This is another way of examining the business value. The team reports empirical data. Burndown charts are a big one. And if you have your PMBOK guide to hand, we might as well open it up so that I can point you in the direction you need to be reading. For every one of these chapters, my friends, we have a description of how Agile works for that particular knowledge area. You do need to read this in a lot of detail before you exam. So in the PMBOK guide, we're talking about page 178. So in the PMBOK guide on 178, it says considerations for agile or adaptive environments. And then it says adaptive approaches use short cycles to undertake work, review the results, and adapt as necessary. That's exactly what we're talking about right here. See that? It says these cycles provide rapid feedback on the approaches and suitability of deliverables. So those are the opportunities to glean if the value being delivered is what is needed. It says, and generally manifests as iterative scheduling and on-demand, pull-based scheduling, as discussed in the section on key trends and emerging practices. So even before this page, there's a page 177 that has iterative scheduling with a backlog talked about. Do you see that? It says, this is a form of rolling wave planning, blah, blah, blah. And then we've also got on-demand scheduling. Now, I am curious to know, how many of you have studied the Agile modules on the learning management system? Because if you've not, you might struggle with some of these concepts. And that is why in the past I did ask, make sure you study those Agile, Scrum related modules. Did I say earned value? I hope not. I meant to say Agile modules and Scrum and Kanban and things like that. We got a question, does value refer to deliverable? Very good. In most instances, it could, because you get your value from using that deliverable increment. It's not the entire deliverable, but it's an increment of the deliverable that gives you satisfaction. So if you can deliver just a little bit of a web page that contains information that the company wants to get out, it's not the whole thing, but it's just one page. It's a landing page. At least people coming to the company's website can get what they need. Employees can get what they need from that one page. It's not the entire deliverable. It's just an increment that delivers value. So that value, that satisfaction that they get from at least not being disoriented, that is value, and things like that. The next place I want you to go to talk about these burn down charts, it seems like everyone has, to some degree, taken a look at those Agile videos, which is good. But let's talk about these burn down charts in control schedule. Page 226 has got an iteration burn down chart. And it says here, this chart tracks the work that remains to be completed in the iteration backlog. It is used to analyze the variance with respect to an ideal burn down. So the ideal burn down, you can see it straight going down. The actual is those square-shaped lines. So you can see the square-shaped little points going down. That is the actual. And you can see they're a little bit off. So in terms of days, they're going to get done on the 11.5 day, on the date line there, but they were meant to have gotten done on day 10. So this iteration burn down chart is really what we're talking about here. And it's one of the important pieces of tracking Agile projects. All right. So the team reports empirical data, burn down charts. You also have burn up charts. We also could use Kanban boards in the world of Agile. What is a Kanban board? Very rapidly, I will show you what this is so that we can move on, but I know some of you already know what this is. A Kanban board is broken down into 3 sections: to do, doing, and done. Now we could go a step further and we could have a column with so many other pieces that need to be flown into this pipeline. So simple analogy, as a project manager, you get to work, you got a bunch of work to do. You decide what you're going to do when you get to work. Now, bear in mind, you've got a much bigger backlog on the left-hand side with the arrow pointing down, but you're going to select some things to do for the day. As your project or your day begins to unfold, you begin to move some of these into the doing column for you to execute. you do not want to do too many things at once. 2, not bad. 3, you're pushing it. You're pushing the WIP, not the physical WIP, but the WIP, the work in progress limit. So every team decides on their WIP, work in progress. What is the maximum number of things we're going to have spinning in the air? 1, 2, 3. That's enough. No more than 3. So every team has their WIP. If you're doing this as an individual, you've got your WIP. Now you might say, well, I'm going to have 3 because I'm waiting on a deliverable. Excuse me, from someone else. But ultimately, as you begin to get things done, you move them into the done column. And then more things are introduced into the pipeline. And that's how the Kanban board works at a high level. They have a lot of illustrations here in the Agile Practice Guide. But if you have not opened the Agile Practice Guide, this is actually talked about here as well. So let me tell you where you can get an image of this on page 105 of the Agile Practice Guide. It is not, I wouldn't say absolutely common practice, but a lot of teams do use a Kanban board in Scrum. And they actually go as far as making it a Scrum ban, if you will. Medley. This is talked about on page 106 of this document. Oh, not 106, let's see. This is talked about on 108, and I'll just read. It says, Scrum Ban is an agile approach, originally designed as a way to transition from Scrum to Kanban. And that is Scrum Ban to answer that question. But to give you an illustration of the Kanban board, you can see on page 105, they have rather elaborate example there. And you can see the Kanban board has been broken down into analysis, to-do, analysis, development, test, and deploy. So as you get ready for your exam, my friends, you also need to read this. This is going to help you better understand what the PMI is looking for from you. So in the world of Agile, when you're using Scrum, you can also use a Kanban board, and you can make it a medley of sorts, Scrum Ban. Now, as we get towards the end of this, it is important that we identify some additional components from the world of Agile. It's really going to help you solidify your knowledge regarding this entire domain, because we will begin to encounter this more and more. So I would like to shift gears here and talk a little bit about how Agile works. So I'm going to show you a few slides that talk about the PMI's perspective towards Agile as documented in the Agile Practice Guide. So I call this Jump to Agile. You have to immerse yourself into the values of Agile. In Agile, we believe in individuals and interactions, people working together over processes and tools. We believe in working software over comprehensive documentation, reams and reams of paper. What's the point if we don't have working software? Now, we're not saying that comprehensive documentation is bad, but we value what is on the left more than what is on the right. We value humans, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. We want to look at this as we are working together, not we're working against each other or competing. We're also looking at responding rapidly to change. We would rather throw out the plan and respond to change that's going to deliver value quick. There are 12 agile principles. We got to satisfy the customer, welcome changing requirements. You need to say, thank you for these changed requirements because they're going to add value to you more than just following a plan. Many projects midway, it's too late. You realize this software is now obsolete. This solution is now obsolete. Too late. We're committed to it. We have to see it through to the end. But in the world of Agile, we say no. We welcome changing requirements. We deliver working software frequently. Why do we want to do that? One, to deliver business value, and two, to be able to adapt to the marketplace if we need to. Collaborate daily through daily stand-ups, motivated individuals, face-to-face conversations. That's why we co-locate the team a lot in the world of Agile. Regularity in reflecting on continuously improving. Self-organizing teams. We assume people are adults. They can manage their work themselves. We don't need to micromanage. Simplicity is essential. Continuous attention to technical excellence. Promote sustainable development and measure of progress through working product. If you haven't delivered a working product, we cannot say that you have achieved greatness. Agile has got several different flavors, and in the Agile Practice Guide, the PMI make this very clear on page 11. In this image, I do not show everything that the PMI has shown, but you get an idea that Agile is an umbrella of many things, and you can see that Scrum is just one of these things. Just one of these things, okay? The Scrum process is what we're going to talk about, and it's very important, as highlighted. Those of you reading the chat here, our friend Yasser says we need to put borders when welcoming change, not to allow gold plating. Absolutely. So when you use the Agile framework, though, the word gold plating and scope creep, they are attacked differently. Why? Because in the middle of an iteration, you cannot just randomly throw in stuff. Change is welcome through a pipeline, but that pipeline has a gatekeeper. The product owner is the gatekeeper. And if the product owner doesn't see value, they're going to have a hard time adding that to the product backlog. When something does make its way into the backlog, the gatekeeper, the product owner, has taken that user story or that collection of user stories from the business and allowed it in. This next image will underscore what happens in Agile. Now, as I said on the previous slide, the world of Agile is very robust. These are some of the flavors: Scrum, Kanban, Crystal, XP, FDD, RUP, DSDM, and in the PMBOK guide, you see even more. Scrumban, AUP, and the list could go on. They have a more elaborate breakdown of other flavors. The PMI recently purchased an Agile-oriented framework from an organization, and there are other organizations that espouse scaling Agile up or down. We won't go into that today. But what I really want to focus on is the Scrum process, because even though it is just one, it is one of the many Agile flavors, but it is the most dominant. 71% plus of companies that use Agile use Scrum. That's right. Think about it. 71% gravitate towards this. This is the other 30 or 29%. And that's why Scrum is very dominant in the world. And that's why in this training, we are going to be focusing on Scrum. So let's focus on the Scrum process. So the Scrum process starts off with this entity that we will call the product owner. This is the product owner. The product owner is someone who understands the business well. Like I said, the person serves in some way as a gatekeeper of sorts. And I want you to follow me to the Agile Practice Guide because the product owner is defined on page 153. So let's go to page 153 and read that. And it says here, product owner, a person responsible for maximizing the value of the product. You see the word value again, and who is ultimately responsible and accountable for the end product that is built. See that? So the product owner, it starts off with the product owner, someone who knows the business. The product owner has an idea of what he or she would want to see in the pipeline. These are user stories. These user stories come from the business. And this collection of user stories, we have a name for this. The name that we call this collection right here of pretty much everything that needs to be done or that they would like to be done is a product backlog. The product backlog is a collection of user stories. What is a user story? A user story is a user-oriented description of what the customer or what the end user wants. It is written in this format. It is written like this. As a, whatever you are, I would like, whatever you would like, so that whatever the need you want will be accomplished. You see that? As a, I would like, so that. So we would not call the customer the product owner. No, the customer is someone in the business, in the trenches of the business. The product owner is more removed from the business, but understands the business and can play multiple roles. But we would not see them as the customer or the end user, even if they're benefiting from it. We would like to see them as that, the product owner. Okay, so the product owner is an entity that is dedicated to this. Now, all of these user stories, they come from the business. So even though the product owner may have a lot of experience in the business, we are not going to refer to them as the customer. They are an entity that is very unique in the world of Agile. Now, in the business, you could have the customers. The product owner, in many instances, comes from the business. Kanban may be a close second, but I'm not absolutely sure regarding Kanban. But the bottom line is, in the world of Agile, when it's being taught, Scrum is usually the first reference point because it is very visual, as you can see. I was working with a former student of mine who works for the government, and this student got stuck and was not able to move forward on the project. What helped the student move forward was user stories to really get down to the bottom of what the customer wanted. As a director, I would like a dashboard so that I can check up on my team and see how they're performing. As a patient, I would like a gadget so that I can check up on my doctor's availability and medication availability even before ringing them up, or things such as that. So your user story is very specific. It's not just saying, I want something. It's telling you what my role is, what I want, and why. What does that do? It helps the developer narrow down what to give you and how. It could also show additional opportunities that would be lost in the world of traditional requirements, where we just say, I want this. So the role, what you want, why you want it is important. So this product backlog, it goes on. And the product backlog, like we said, we welcome change. So when people say, I would like, we're not going to shut them up or shut them down. We let them tell us what they want. And if the product owner decides to put it in the backlog, then so be it. This next thing that we have here is called a sprint backlog. So this is your product backlog. We're going to cordon it off so that you know where it is. That's your product backlog. Next, we have a subsection of it. The subsection of your product backlog is a sprint backlog, and we're going to cordon it off so that we know what we are going to work on in the sprint. Now, in the sprint, you have developers who are working on the things that you have decided to work on. So here we've said we're going to take 4 user stories and we're going to do them in the sprint. And we call this the sprint backlog. We have sprint planning where this takes place. There are many ceremonies in the world of Agile. And one of the things that we do is we plan the sprint. The team plans the sprint with the product owner. Now, the sprint is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks typically, but some teams are more aggressive. So the typical sprint is 4 to 6 weeks. Some teams are aggressive and do 2 weeks. Some teams do even longer. Really depends. That's why it's a free world when it comes to Agile. The rules of engagement are not as strict as the rules in waterfall or predictive world. So the sprint, like I said, is 4 to 6 weeks, but you could have variation. Some people might say, I want to do it in 1 week. I want to do it in 3. It's up to them. And that's why in the cycle, you've got a variation. It could be anything. So if a team decides to do it in 1 week, they could, but they need to make sure that all the work in the sprint backlog is done. And if it's not done, that work that is not done will be reviewed at the end. So like I said, the world of Agile is very free. There are very many perspectives of how many weeks it should be. In the IT industry, it could be 2 weeks. That's pretty much the spot I've heard. Some companies could differ. So there's no hard and fast rule. And that's why I've given you various perspectives. Some teams could say, I want to do it in 1. And there's nothing wrong in that. Okay? All right. So the team, this group of people interacting in the sprint, doing it over and over and over and doing things over and over again across 4 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks, however long. But the team decides, and usually once you've locked it down, you've locked it down. All the sprints are the same size in iteration-based Agile. But we could also have a flow-based approach. And in a flow-based approach, we could have variation in your sprint time box. So keep that in mind. But typically, we want to time box it to be the same. Every sprint is going to be 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 1 week, however long. And the idea is that in multiple sprints, we will cover all the work in the backlog. So part of the ceremonies of Scrum is a daily Scrum, also known as a daily stand-up meeting. And you can see here these individuals having a conversation there. Those people having the conversation are really answering those 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? What are the impediments I can help you remove? And we have an individual known as a Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is that person who removes impediments for the team, who helps the team in a servant leader capacity. Every 24 hours, this daily stand-up that does not exceed 15 minutes most times is held. In the meeting, we have those who are committed to the work, the developers. We call them the pigs. We call them the pigs because there's a story about the chicken and the pig that went to a diner for breakfast. And up there it said eggs and bacon for breakfast. And the pig said, I'm not going in there. For you, it's just a donation. For me, it's total sacrifice. No. So in the world of Scrum, the pigs, total sacrifice, trying to get the work done. The chickens are those outside, like in the business. The customer, those are the chickens. And in the daily Scrum, we do not let the chickens talk. They listen. After the meeting, they can speak. We also try to shield the team from those chickens that drag them out and waste their time. So the Scrum Master puts a barricade, if you will, around the team to prevent the team from being pulled out into unnecessary things. At the end of the sprint, 4 to 6 weeks, 1 to 6 weeks, however you want to spin it, we will get a shippable product increment. And that shippable product increment does not necessarily mean we are going to release it. But as we try to get this shippable product increment, we should also be asking the questions at the end when we demo it in a sprint review. We should be asking the question, does this meet the needs? What can we do better? What did we mess up in this sprint that we can do next? And that's why we have a second meeting called a retrospective. And in the retrospective, we focus more on what we did wrong and what we can do right. In the sprint review, we're really just demoing the product. So from the demo, if the customer or the product owner or someone says, this isn't good, then it means we need to go back to the drawing board and make it good. This is not a question of it's in the plan. We did what's in the plan. So I hope you're beginning to realize how this world works very differently. Okay. So is Scrum an iterative development or incremental development or both? So to get an answer to this very good question, I want to invite you to open page 18 in this book. Open up page 18. And what does it say? Table 3-1. Table 3-1, you can see the requirements, the activities, and the delivery, and the goal. What makes Agile different from other methods is it is both an incremental and iterative approach in many instances. So we're repeating it until it's correct, iterative, but at the same time, we are giving you frequent, smaller deliveries. So let's read on page 19. It says, leverage both aspects of iterative and incremental in Agile life cycles. Agile life cycles leverage both the aspects of iterative and incremental characteristics. When teams use Agile approaches, they iterate over the product to create finished deliverables. The team gains early feedback and provides customer visibility, confidence, and control of the product. Because the team can release earlier, the project may provide an earlier return on investment because the team delivers the highest value work first. And that's part of what we're talking about. So very good question about the difference between iterative and incremental. Let's go to the whiteboard to take a look at this in a little bit more detail. Taking a look at the PMBOK sidekick known as the Agile Practice Guide on page 19, you have this image. and it shows you incremental, and then to the right of that, you can see Agile. And then directly underneath Agile, you see Iterative. And then to the left of that, you see Predictive. And then on the x-axis, it says degree of change. So if that is a 0 point, and we're talking about degree of change there. Degree of change. In other words, they're showing you that the degree of change is much more in the world of Agile and Iterative. And then that way you can see the frequency of delivery. Frequency of delivery. So what are they saying here? Predictive, you have low frequency of delivery. Incremental, high frequency of delivery. Agile, high frequency of delivery and high degree of change. Iterative, low frequency of delivery. It's a one-time delivery, but the degree of change is high because you're trying to do things over and over again until it is perfect. So let's take a look at the table on page 18 one more time. So if you take a look at this table, you can see the difference between predictive, iterative, incremental, and agile. In the world of predictive, the requirements are fixed, but all the other methods have a dynamic air to the requirements. The requirements are allowed to move on you. The delivery is what distinguishes these from each other. Again, predictive is single delivery, iterative is single delivery, but incremental and agile are frequent smaller deliveries. What is the goal of each of these? Predictive, we all know it's cost. Management gets crazy when the cost goes higher, right? But in the world of agile, customer value via frequent smaller deliveries and feedback. That's what we're looking for. Incremental is all about speed, and iterative is doing it until it's correct. Correctness of the solution. So that is pretty much the difference between your agile, your iterative, your incremental, your predictive, all right? So I hope that answers the very good question that you asked. Because indeed, when you take the exam, the PMI, they would like to know that you know the differences between those. So page 18, I would advise you to look at that page again and again. Watch this video again and go over some of these things that we've spoken about, all right? So another discussion we need to have is going into the world of MVP. It is a term that is very important, and you will see that this term comes up over and over again. So let's tackle it head on. MVP stands for the minimum viable product. And we all know that completeness is subjective. We could say, no, it's not complete. Someone else could say it is complete. It's a subjective thing. So the team may need feedback on a prototype. Remember my example in the beginning of my customer who at the end of the day said, no, no, no. Well, I wish we had used the concept of delivering a minimum viable product. If we had, we would have gotten feedback. It says a customer's feedback helps the team learn what they need to provide for subsequent delivery of the final finished feature. So you know what the final thing should look like. Agile teams, as a key differentiator, deliver business value often. As the product adds a broader set of features and a broader range of consumers, we say it is delivered incrementally. The concept of MVP is a concept from lean startup that stresses the impact of learning in new product development. We as developers, we need to learn. And this validated learning comes in the form of whether your customers will actually purchase your product. So Eric Rice defined an MVP as that version of a new product that allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning. Minimum product, that new product that allows a team collect the maximum amount of validated learning that about customers with the least effort. So we're trying to put in the minimum effort to get the maximum amount of learning. A key premise behind this idea of MVP is that you produce an actual product, which may be no more than a landing page or a service with an appearance of automation, but which is fully manual behind the scenes that you can offer to customers and observe their actual behavior. So if you've ever been in the world of web design, you know you can provide a static page with links that give the impression that it's all automated behind, but it's not. It's manual. It's all connected with links, but it gives you the opportunity to get that early feedback, that learning that is needed for the final thing. Seeing what people actually do with respect to a product is more reliable than asking people what they would do. So to give you a clearer idea of this, let's examine this image from Henrik Nyberg. And in this, you can see the wrong approach to MVP. Think about it. In the first image up top, you have a customer being given one tire. That is not the minimum viable product when we're working with a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. So the customer is mad. What about 2 tires? The customer is still mad. What about this? Customer is still mad until you give them this. So this is not the way we want to go. This is what we want to do to provide that functionality that can still get you to point B. It's not a car yet, but it's that minimum viable products where we can begin to learn lessons. We can begin to understand what exactly the customer really wants. So we want to give them something that at least is a sensible form of getting the job done, going from point A to point B. It's not the final thing, but through iterative development, we build on what we've given them. So we've given them a skateboard or a cart or something that can get them there, and then we just begin to build on it. So it is still a functional thing, unlike this, that is not functional. No. We want to give them something that at least will give us an idea if we're headed in the right direction. And if we're not headed in the right direction, we want to begin to change early, unlike predictive. You see, the problem with predictive is we learn too late. Someone refers to it as a big bang. So we don't want a big bang at the end. So as the product adds a broader set of features, like you saw in that image, and a broader range of consumers, we say it is delivered incrementally. So we want to deliver value. We don't just want to deliver 2 tires. That's not value. The primary benefit of an MVP is you can gain an understanding about your customer's interest in your product without fully developing the product. The sooner you can find out whether your product will appeal to customers, the less effort and expense you spend on a product that will not succeed in the market. Remember my example of my customer? You don't want that to happen. Teams may confuse MVP with a term known as MMF, minimum marketable product, or minimum marketable feature. This is not the same. Okay, so we're not talking about delivering the smallest piece to the customer for the smallest cost. No, we're talking about delivering something to the customer, the minimum value we can deliver to get the maximum knowledge back. So teams deliver what they consider an MVP, and then they don't do any further changes to the product. That is a bad practice of MVP. No, we want to continue to improve. And that is why Yas's comment about the time box, it really applies a lot to predictive. But in this world of Agile, we want to welcome it. We want to say, yeah, bring it on. bring on the comments, bring on, you know, the changes, because we know that it's going to lead us to collaborating, right, over negotiation. We want to collaborate over butting heads. We don't want to butt heads. We want to accept those changes that give us value. So a team effectively uses MVP as a core piece of a strategy or experimentation. They hypothesize that the customers have a need and that the product the team is working on satisfies the need. The team then delivers something to those customers in order to find out if in fact the customers will use the product to satisfy those needs. And if they do, then you're in the right direction. So based on that information gained from the experiment, the team continues, note the word changes again, or they might even cancel work on the product. So these are ways you need to be thinking in the world of Agile. Change is not bad. If it is going to satisfy the customer, it's not bad. The concern in the world of Agile, when we approach it, is not primarily cost. You see, in our world of predictive, sometimes we focus so heavily on cost that we miss value. Cost and value are different things, right? So in the world of predictive, we try to streamline those change requests, and that's okay. That is totally fine, because the way predictive works is different from the way Agile works, and none of them is evil or bad. Some people look at Agile as being evil. This is a free ticket for scope creep. No, the mindset is very different. And those of you who are in the training on Saturdays in Agile, you've already been drinking the Kool-Aid. We've begun to give you those subliminal messages that change is good. And I'm hoping that it is actually working. I hope you're beginning to see, okay, change isn't a bad thing. Change is not evil. So the second value here, Mohanad, is working software. You want software that works well. You want coding that is done well, something that actually works, rather than focusing on documents and documents and documents and documents. So in the world of predictive, we are so obsessed with documents. Do I need to give you a reminder about how obsessed we are with documents? And when I say obsessed, even in minimum quantities, the documentation that we work with in the world of predictive is pretty overwhelming. It is. It is a lot of documentation. It is. Let me illustrate what is being said as briefly as possible so that we can move to the meat. Here is an example from a predictive outfit, a predictive establishment, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, I know they use various flavors, but the sheer amount of artifacts and documentation here is absolutely overwhelming to some people. Take a look at that. Tons of documentation. But there are some projects you need this degree, okay? Some projects you have to be predictive. You need your schedules. You need your plans because it is a fully plan-driven project. You have to. You have to. Now, let's compare and contrast that to what you have in the world of Scrum. Let us go to the web page that was put together by Jeff and Ken, the creators of Scrum. Let's go there. Take a look at this page. And let's read the Scrum Guide. Here's a Scrum Guide. This is the Scrum Guide. Let's go to Scrum Artifacts. Can you see the Scrum artifacts talked about here? You've got a product backlog, a sprint backlog, and you've got the increment, and those are your artifacts. Compare that to this. So in the world of Agile and Scrum, what we are espousing is not to put a bad light on predictive. It's just that we value getting our working software over tons of documentation. Okay? So we want to focus less on documents. whether they be technical documents, whether they be project management related documents, that shouldn't be our focus. It's a mindset. You see, if you are thinking in terms of what is the minimum amount of documentation that I use to get my customer value, if you are thinking in that fashion, then you will overcome that mindset problem that a lot of people have in predictive. Let's be honest, in predictive, some companies, they just do documentation because they can do documentation. And a lot of people in companies, they're moving away from that because there's no value in it. And that's why we value working software over comprehensive documentation. By the way, this is on page 8, and this is the Agile Manifesto and Mindset. So thought leaders in software industry formalized the Agile movement in 2001 with the publication of the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. As you can see in figure 2-1, it says, we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation. We're not saying no documentation. We're just saying that we don't get obsessed with documentation, be it technical documentation, project documentation, whatever. At the end, it says, that is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Okay, so I hope that answers your question to some degree. And we can talk about this some more in Agile class. So my friends, there you have it. The world of Agile and the way we need to be thinking. Now that you are armed with all of this new understanding, let us go back to the task at hand and finish it off. The last thing we talked about was the burndown chart, and I showed you an example. So as you're going through an Agile project, the burndown chart is showing you what is being accomplished, and you're making sure that you are actually following what you planned. And if not, that's okay. You can make tweaks and adjustments in future sprints. Last but not least, this will make absolute sense and it will not take long at all. The enabler, just so you have your eye on the right place, top right, the enabler is to support the team to subdivide project tasks as necessary to find the minimum viable product. What is the minimum amount to deliver to get the maximum knowledge back? So you're meant to support the team to do that. Subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. Basically, we have what we call epics. Now, if you remember, I showed you what a product backlog looks like with all the user stories in it. Well, sometimes you have giant user stories that we call epics. They're so big, we got to break them down into smaller stories. So all of this stuff has to be done. We have to break the work down into user stories and list that in the product backlog. Who is responsible for that? The product owner. And that's why the Scrum Alliance have training that is specific to the product owner. It's called product owner training. Some of you might be product owners. Any product owners in the building? So the product owner, team facilitator, responsible for this. Why do we need or do this? The key benefit is that it provides a framework of what has to be delivered. So we want to know what is going to be delivered. We're going to break it up into tiny pieces. That's sprint 1, that's sprint 2, that's sprint 3, and so on. When and where is it done? Throughout the project as required. How is it done? Well, I showed you. Product owners might produce a product roadmap to show the anticipated sequence of deliverables over time. Now, for those of you that have not taken a look in the PMBOK guide, I want to call your attention to a particular page where PMI subliminally gives you an agile infusion. In other words, they kind of slide it in so that you don't really notice it, except you're studying for the exam. This is on page 216. So let's go to page 216. And in the book, I'm talking about this image, that one right there. You see that? That image. So in that image, you can see the product vision drives the product roadmap. The product roadmap drives release plans, so on and so forth. Please take a look at that one. I think it's going to be helpful as you study for the exam. This is one of the visualizations of the Agile world that is not in any previous PMBOK guide. It just shows you the direction that the PMI is tending towards being not just a fully plan-driven espousing organization, but really tending towards being a hybridized type of organization. And we see that in what they're doing today. And hybridization is not a bad thing. So let's take a look at this together. I will show you an animated version of it. So if you recall what I showed you in the world of Scrum, this is very, very similar. So the product vision drives the product roadmap. And this is really a collection of releases. We need to have an idea of the product. Where is it going? Where are we headed towards? The product roadmap drives release plans. Now, these release plans are really a collection of sprints. They are also known as iterations, but they're really the sprints that we looked at. So can you imagine those sprints I showed you that were anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks? Some organizations may use 2 or 4, but imagine us having many of these sprints for a release. So we come up with the first release, a number of sprints. Second release, a number of sprints. And in this image, we don't even show you release 2 and 3. We just show you an example of what is happening in a release. The release plan establishes these iterations. And as I showed you in the example, these iterations or sprints are then broken down into user stories. So these user stories could also be called features. Our goal is to break down these features into tasks. And those tasks are not necessarily tracked as tasks on every project. In fact, on some projects, we're not tracking tasks the way we do traditionally as in ours. We can size user stories using what we call story points. But that is taking it to next level. For the sake of this PMP exam update in 2020, this is sufficient for this task. However, I want to crave your indulgence to watch the videos on the Praizion site. And I also want to crave your indulgence to look up story points in your Agile practice guide so that you can understand other ways that we size stories and work. Okay, so story points and story cards. I would like you to go read those up. Those are very simple. So the summary is this: we can size a user story in points versus hours. And we could say this is the effort required, not even the work in terms of hours. We could size it based on the effort. How difficult would it be? And we can make it relative. So we could say, okay, to program a shopping cart, if we make that a 5, then we would make something like a web page a 1 or 3, for example. All right, but there's a lot more to that. And I would like you to go read that up. It is sort of outside the view of this particular task. So going back here, Remember what we're doing? This particular one is to support the team to subdivide project tasks as necessary to find the MVP, the minimum amount to deliver to get back the maximum feedback that we can incorporate back into the product. So, minimum viable product, I showed you an example of the car and the skateboard. We want to target the one on the right. It has to be delightful to some degree, not completely delightful, but to some degree, usable, valuable, and feasible. Not the one on the left that is nothing. It's not feasible, it's not valuable, it's not usable, it's not delightable. We don't want that, right? We want the one on the right, okay? So again, in lean product development, the minimum viable product to MVP is a strategy to avoid building products that customers don't need or want by maximizing our learning of what is valuable to the customer. Agile is typically learned through exposure to a series of agile practices, a recipe of sorts. So as a reminder, MVP, stuff that we talked about before, utterly important as someone taking this exam. And there we have it. The very first task in domain 2. And now you can probably see why I was a bit concerned in the beginning, because we spent roughly an hour talking about one task. But here's the good news. This one task is new in the world of the PMI, so it made sense for us to actually flesh this out. Let me take you back to our crossover map. And if you take a look here, you can see that the PMI have sectioned this out as new because these are truly new to the exam. They do need to be covered in detail, and that's why I did not hold back in covering the breadth of the information. But now we're done with this, we have to make it a little bit more pragmatic. So I'm going to crave your indulgence to answer, you got it, questions. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and we're going to make sure that we actually come away with some good perspective for this area. So let's get started with our questions. Here is your poll. I'm sorry I did not close the poll. I should have. All right, here we go. First question. You are in the process of assessing opportunities to deliver value the best way possible. This value would typically be delivered as part of a what? I'll give you 1 minute. This is a bit of a new world for some of us. Take a look, think about it. A lot of new terms swirling around in your head. Let me ask you this question. When you're done, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's end the poll and let's share the results. And this is really good because it is beginning to immerse you into the world of Agile. So you're beginning to discover things afresh from a different perspective. But I want to leverage your experience in the predictive world. Let's see. What I'm going to do is give you some options for a predictive question because I want you to rethink this. You're in the process of assessing opportunities to deliver value the best way possible. This value will typically be delivered as part of a So when you see things like this, you need to ask, what exactly does this mean? See. Now, I am going to relaunch the poll because I want you to self-correct and to identify what is on the left, what is on the right in the world of predictive. What would I do in the world of predictive? You see where I'm going with this? So, in the world of predictive, your deliverable, right, which gives value to the customer, would be delivered as part of a what in the world of predictive? Think about it, because what is on the left, I've tried as much as possible to mirror to the right. You see what I'm saying? So, would you deliver value as part of a what? That's pretty much what this is asking. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's end the poll. And remember, no one knows, it's all anonymous. And looking at the results, which I'll keep confidential, everyone knows who's who. In their head, you know who you are and you know what you voted. I don't know. But majority of the folks got this one right again. Although this time we had some slant towards the RTM. So think about it. How would you deliver your value? You would deliver value as part of a phase in the world of predictive. You would deliver value as part of a sprint. At the end of every sprint, the minimum viable product, the minimum shippable product, whatever you want to call it. So it's not a play on words. You could get questions like this on the exam, and there's no trickery, you see. So yeah, you deliver the deliverable as part of a phase. At the end of a phase, you get a deliverable. It's not always at the end of the project. You could deliver value in a predictive project phase by phase. So you get this deliverable done, and then you get another deliverable done, and all together they make up the macro deliverable, even in predictive. So the answer to that, which is a new perspective, and I totally understand it's a new perspective. The answer is sprint. This describes a sprint, okay? We deliver value not as part of a requirement and not as part of a storyboard, even though, you know, storyboard, we could deliver a storyboard and say, oh, this is what we've done, but it's part of a sprint, you know. Okay. That is a little bit of a new one for some of us, but don't worry, we're learning, okay? Let's go to the next one. Value should be planned into the project by which of the following? Value should be planned into the project by which of the following? Who plans value into the project? Glad you're enjoying it. All right. So this is a departure again from what we know in the world of predictive. And that is why I wanted you to come to the Agile class so that you can beef up your understanding. So in this instance, the best answer, let's end the poll, share the results. The best answer to this would have been product owner and team. Product owner and team would have been the best, but product owner is not here. We have some ambiguous term, product manager, which is from a fully plan-driven world in some instances, or a hybrid world, but it is really a team thing. How do we know it's a team thing? Let me take you back to the outline. Let's go back to the outline, my friends. This is an outline you're going to have to study a little bit. Going back to the outline, support the team to subdivide project tasks as necessary. It's a team thing. Examine the business value. Assess opportunities to deliver value incrementally. This is what the team does, even though the product owner could be on the horizon. It is really more of a collaborative effort. So that question, in as much as you did not have the product owner, the next best option is actually the team. Okay, so it's a new world and that's okay. We're learning, we're getting used to this. The best answer is a team. Okay. All right. Let me give you one more. And then I'll show you something that we could do to get better in some of these questions. Here we go. At what stage of a project should the business value be assessed? At what stage of a project should the business value be assessed? I'll give you a minute. That's okay. It's a new world. Everything here looks different. We'll get used to it. Don't worry. Now you know what you don't know. That's a good thing. Five, four, three, two, and one. Well done. It seems like we had a perfect score on this one. And I am not only happy, but relieved that we all got it right. Thank goodness. You need to assess business value throughout the project. I'm very glad that we got that. Absolutely important. Okay, let's try one more for good measure. And here is your poll relaunched. On a project, the project manager should what? Remember to put on your hybrid hat. Don't wear an agile only hat or a predictive only hat. On the exam, the PMI are not going to announce, here is an agile question. No, they're not going to do that. So you got to choose the best from the perspective of someone who is in the middle, looking everywhere, okay? Ten seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's end the poll. Share the results. Thank you very much for your participation. Let's take a look. So here are the options. Let's go through them one by one and use the process of elimination as I would expect you to on the exam. Now, even though they don't have a strikeout tool, you need to mentally strike them out. All right. So the first one here, D, I'm going to start from the bottom up. Support the team to subdivide project work as necessary. That's good, you should. But why are you subdividing the project work? Is it to find the smallest work package? It's to find the minimum viable product. as we can read in the outline, to jump really quickly to the outline. Support the team to subdivide project tasks as necessary to find the minimum viable product. So if we go back to the question, this question addresses, or the answer D addresses smallest work package. We're not trying to find that. We're not trying to find the smallest amount of work to do, to make it more manageable. We're trying to find the MVP so that we can get that feedback. So D is not the best option. C, educate and train the team to subdivide project schedules as necessary. We don't subdivide schedules. They're already subdivided from work packages in the world of predictive. So even though this is mixing up predictive and agile terms, we can see that some of them are bogus. And there's no such thing as a minimum viable task. So that's incorrect. No one chose it. B, subdivide project tasks as necessary. Think about it. Do you really subdivide tasks? It's already a task, which means it's been broken out from a work package. So if you were in predictive world, would you subdivide a work package, a task into something else? We could. We could say we're dividing tasks into a subtask. When do we do that? When we don't have a full understanding of resources. But it said in the second phrase, minimum viable cost of production? No. Our goal is to subdivide project tasks so that we can manage the work in the world of predictive properly in a WBS, but it's not to find the minimum viable cost of production, which is not even a term that we use in predictive or agile. So B is bogus. The answer to this is A, exactly as it is in the content outline. And that's why I recommend that you read the content outline, because you will know for a fact where the PMI are going. You will know. So here's the good news. We just upped our efficiency by 50%. How? Because now you guys are more sensitive to Agile and what they could do on this pilot exam. And at the same time, you're aware of what Agile is and the different flavors. And you're also more aware that, wow, you mean they could do this on the exam? Yes. They could mix approaches because we are not strictly in a predictive world anymore. The PMI moved away from that model years ago. So even today, people are getting Agile. If you're taking the current exam, I want you to know that the PMI very well could give you some Agile stuff easily. Okay. So someone said this is fun. I'm happy to hear that. Let's do one more, and I'm going to give you a break after the final question in this bank. Let's go on to question 5. This is a question about being in an adaptive environment. Let me relaunch the poll for you. In an adaptive environment, which of the following is true? I'm going to give you a minute. Read it carefully. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let us end the poll. Share the results. Now, in this case, even though we have majority in B, that is not exactly the correct answer. Unfortunately, it's not. And it's not the correct answer because it is incorrect to say the product owner has control of detailed product planning and delivery. No, this needs to be thought of as interactions of the individuals over processes and tools. In the world of Agile, when you hear control, you got to be careful because it's not the traditional management approach where a manager external to the project, such as a sponsor, is in charge. And no, the team is in charge. From beginning to the end, you got to be thinking of this as a team thing. The Scrum Master is also part of the team. In many circles, the product owner is considered to be part of the team to some degree. They're not the development team, but they're part of the team working to get it done. So whenever you get questions that say who is in control, you want to err on the side of the team. Now, the product owner has some very specific tasks that have been assigned to him or her, such as funneling in those stories, those user stories from the business. But the moment it hits that product backlog and we're beginning to plan what to do and how to do it and when, it is no longer in the product owner's sole jurisdiction. You then begin to involve other people, the development team and the Scrum Master. So the word team is very wide. It's a wide net. It's not just the programmers. You also need to see the Scrum Master where there is one as part of that. Now, I know not every flavor of Agile is Scrum, but you need to think of that person who is working with the team, okay? If you want to call it the project manager in that instance, but it's not the project manager in isolation. And that is why the answer that said designated to the project manager, C, that's wrong, okay? So 2 things to learn from this. The product owner is not like a big old manager managing everyone else, no. You cannot do everything alone on a project. You cannot say you are responsible for this. In the world of Agile, especially, in the world of Agile, we think of an all-inclusive, self-organizing, self-managed team, and everyone on the team is responsible. Everyone picks up their own weight. How do you delegate what is in the sprint backlog to a developer? You don't. They pick what they are going to do from the backlog. It's different from the traditional approach where we say, all right, you, Allison, you're going to do this. Brittany, you're going to do this. Yasser, you're going to do this. Mohammed, you sort everything else out in the integration. Fail you. No, not so. In the world of Agile, you have people that pick from the backlogs what to do based on what they know they're capable of. And if there are things that need tag teaming and working together in pairs, that's done as well in the world of Agile. So my friends, the answer to this is A. But you know what I'm really excited about? I'm excited that we are learning. We are learning. Now, I would like you to read in a lot of detail. Let me focus on it. I want you to go read this thing, okay? We need to read this to get good for the exam. I want to read some to you. So let's read on page 92, if you are in this book. I just want to read the beginning. It says, adaptive approaches use short cycles to undertake work, review the results, and adapt as necessary. These cycles provide rapid feedback on the approaches and suitability of deliverables, and generally manifest as iterative scheduling and on demand. Pull-based scheduling, as discussed in the key trends and emerging practices section of the PMBOK guide. So what is happening here? This is referencing this. Do you know what else I want you to do? I want you to read every CTTC section in this book. Concepts, trends, tailoring, and consideration for Agile. So let me give you the pages as an example in the area of scope. In the area of scope. The concepts, trends, and tailoring start off on page 131, and it goes all the way to page 133. So concepts, trends, tailoring, and you need to know especially the consideration for Agile, okay? The consideration for Agile. It's optional, as I don't want to confuse everyone. What do you mean by it's optional? Well, you see, the pilot exam, now that you know that you are going to receive a fair dose of Agile, it's good. The Agile questions, when they appear, it will be very, very clear that this smells of Agile. You'll know. And it's said in an adaptive environment. Which of the following is true? So it's really helping you demarcate that this is an adaptive thing. This is not a fully plan driven thing. Okay. So I mean, the payoff is going to be huge for those of you who are going through the pilot exam. The payoff is going to be huge because I tell you, all of this stuff we're talking about, and those of you that are also on the Saturday Agile class, when you see these questions, as you practice them, you're going to get better and better and better. Okay. So as you read through, you'll find that some of this stuff is a direct cutout of the PMBOK guide. But it's that time that you guys need a break. We're coming to the 2-hour mark, believe it or not, and we've just done one. So at this point, we are going to stop the recording. And when we come back, we are going to continue talking about a lot of these other tasks right here. Let's see when we come back.